Hello, my name is David Petrosky. I'm a California attorney representing landlords with eviction cases. Today, I'm going to be discussing the 30 and 60-day notice to terminate tenancy in California. This form is used by California landlords when they want to terminate a month-to-month tenancy at no fault of the tenant. But first, a little bit about me. I have been representing landlords since 2004 throughout California. If you check my reviews on sites such as Yelp, Avo, Trustpilot, Facebook, and more, you will see that clients overwhelmingly rate us as a 5-star law firm. I am a published author, having authored a book on California evictions and landlord-tenant best practices. I am a prominent referral source for other attorneys, property management companies, and realtors who need help with tenant evictions, and we get results. On this slide, you'll see an eviction judgment where we received possession of the property, plus a money judgment of over $9,000. Of course, there are no guarantees with any individual case. Today's presentation is going to be broken down into 3 categories. First, I will discuss the purpose of the 30 and 60-day notice, followed by its usefulness, and ending with some guidance for you. First, let's talk about the purpose of the 30 and 60-day notice. A 30 and 60-day notice is used to terminate a month-to-month tenancy in a non-rent controlled jurisdiction. That's very important, non-rent controlled jurisdiction. If your property is subject to rent control, such as Los Angeles City, you might not be able to use this type of notice to terminate tenancy. You'll need to discuss this with your legal counsel before proceeding. The purpose of the 30 or 60-day notice is to end the month-to-month tenancy and regain possession of your property. The termination is not due to some problem of the tenant. This is known as a no-fault tenant eviction. For example, you're not requesting past due rent. You're not saying the tenant is doing something that they're not supposed to be doing, such as maybe the tenant would be smoking when the lease says no smoking. That's not what this notice is for. This notice is to terminate a month-to-month tenancy due to no fault of the tenant. You can't demand past due rent, but you can demand holdover damages if the tenant stays in property after the termination notice expires. Now let's talk about its usefulness. Sometimes a landlord simply wants to regain possession of the property. Maybe they want to move into the property. Maybe they want to sell the property vacant to a new owner. There are various reasons why a landlord might want to terminate a month-to-month tenancy, and this is the way that you go about doing it. It's usually a quick summary proceeding, and it allows landlords to request possession and holdover damages. And holdover damages is the daily value of the rental property from the time the notice expired. So let's say the notice expired on July 30th, but your tenant doesn't move out until August 15th. Well, there's 15 days there that they held over, and you would be entitled to the daily damages calculated the monthly rent divided by 30. Now let's talk about some guidance. You'll want to read and become familiar with California Civil Code 1946 and 1946.1. These 2 code sections discuss the 30 and 60-day notice in California. Now, you can't use this type of a notice if there's currently an unexpired lease in effect. So in other words, if your tenant is on a 1-year lease that has not yet expired, then you can't use this notice. You can only use this notice if the tenant is on a month-to-month agreement. You would use a 30-day notice if your month-to-month tenant has been in the property for less than 1 year, but you must use a 60-day notice if your tenant has been in possession for 1 year or more. It's important to note that your tenant can always give you a 30-day notice to terminate tenancy regardless of how long the tenant has lived in the property. Even if they live there longer than a year, they can give you a 30-day notice. But you as the landlord must give the tenant a 60-day notice if they've been in the property for more than 1 year. You want to make sure that the notice includes required language, including language discussing abandoned property. You also want to include language that talks about the tenant's right to request an initial inspection. There's also a special rule for tenancies at will, and a good example of that is if a parent is allowing a son or daughter to live in the property basically rent-free without any obligations whatsoever. In these types of situations, the landlord can give a 30-day notice under California Civil Code 789 despite the length of time that the person's lived in the property. The 30 or 60-day notice needs to be served in accordance with CCP, which is California Civil Code of Procedure 1162, or by certified or registered mail. As a landlord, you want to make sure you're not doing anything that could be considered a waiver of the notice. For example, you don't want to accept rent that goes beyond expiration of the notice period. If the notice expires mid-month, you would want to make sure that you prorate the last month rent. And then you don't want to give the tenant any type of extension or make them think in any way that you are either waiving or canceling the notice. That can lead to problems down the line if you have to evict. If your tenant stops paying rent after receiving the 30 or 60-day notice, and sometimes that happens for whatever reason, either the tenant gets upset and mad and doesn't want to pay anymore, or maybe they're trying to save up money for a security deposit or first month rent at a new place. If they stop paying rent, you would want to serve them with a 3-day notice for non-payment of rent right away. Don't wait. Just because you're giving them a termination notice doesn't mean they can live there rent-free. Remember, no side deals. Let the notice speak for itself. The next step could be one of two things. Number one, the tenant complies with the notice and moves out. There's nothing else for you to do. On the other hand, if your tenant fails to comply and doesn't move out at the end of the notice period, at that time you're going to have to file an unlawful detainer, which is the fancy word for an eviction, at the courthouse, and that's something that we can help you with if you're in one of our service areas. Feel free to visit our website at attorneydavid.com. Again, that's attorneydavid.com. On the website, you'll see several free forms available for download for landlord use. You'll also have a link to our evictions blog. We publish a lot of articles on landlord-tenant best practices and a lot of information on evictions. We publish updates fairly regularly, so I encourage you to view the blog on an ongoing and frequent basis. Also, if you're in one of our service areas, we offer free consultations for landlords. Again, the website is attorneydavid.com. Finally, if you have not done so already, I encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We offer several different videos for landlord use, and we also will provide links down below to some of the things that we've discussed today and other important links for landlords. Thank you very much.